In this episode of Bears Talk, we have a very special guest, USA Today's NFL draft expert, Luke Easterling, and we are going to go through a complete 7-round Chicago Bears 2023 mock draft. And spoiler alert, there will be a trade with the first overall pick. So, Bears Talkers, let's not waste any time. Let's dive right into this Chicago Bears mock draft. And of course, let's have some Bears talk.
We're going to be an effort-based team.
Darnell being Darnell.
Love playing football.
Ready to open this thing up. Let them know that we're coming.
Before we dive into this mock draft and bring Luke Easterling into the show, I have to ask you guys, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you know every time a new video goes live on our YouTube channel. And if you're listening to this podcast, make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast provider, rate, review the show, leave some comments. I read every single one of them. It's probably a very bad habit, but it also helps bring some comments and some new ideas to the podcast. So please, make sure you leave your thoughts and that those reviews. They help us immensely spread the word about Bears Talk. And I don't want to waste any time here. I want to bring Luke into the show. Luke Easterling, at Luke Easterling on Twitter, my favorite NFL draft analyst. You could find his work on USA Today at draftwire.usatoday.com. And Luke, Bears fans are, I don't want to say an impatient bunch. I want to say they're an excited bunch when it comes to the 2023 NFL draft. And what I've learned here on the Bears Talk YouTube channel is they like getting right into the thick of it quickly without a lot of wasted time like I'm doing right now. First, Luke, how are you today? Are you excited for Chicago Bears mock draft? Well, you know what? It would help if I unmuted you.
That would help. Here I am. There we go. That's better.
Great start.
You did that on purpose. It's good. No, I feel like, man, this is what we all kind of envisioned when Week 18 went the way it did, right? We kind of knew that it was going to generate these types of conversations when Chicago kind of fell backwards into the number one pick, right? This is all the discourse, all the scenarios, all the different things that we get to talk about right now. Thanks to Davis Mills, thanks to the Houston Texans for pulling it off there in Week 18, because now the Bears are sitting in a perfect situation where they have their quarterback. They don't have to spend this pick on a quarterback. They can hold a bidding war. They can stay there at 1 and take the best player in the draft. Fantastic position to be in when you think about all the other resources, the cap space. They've got everything you need to turn this around really quick, and I don't blame Bears fans for being as excited as you possibly can be for a fan base with the team picking number one. It feels a little bit different than I think it does a lot of years.
And listen, I'm obviously excited when you talk about losing my train of thought and forgetting to unmute you. So we're fired up. We're going to get right into this, and we're going to use the great mock draft simulator over at NFLmockdraftdatabase.com, a really awesome draft guide. Denny Carter runs that site. It's one of my favorite mock draft simulators on the web. So I recommend all you Bears fans who are watching this video, listening to this podcast, head over there, show Denny some support, play around with the simulator yourself. You're going to have a lot of fun in the weeks and months leading up to the NFL draft. And I want to set the table here for you, Luke, because you are Ryan Poles today. You are going to be the Chicago Bears general manager, which means all the pressure falls on you. All the comments that are going to come from this video are going to be directed at you and at your Twitter account at Luke Easterling. And what I did before starting this video with you today was I did what all Bears fans want to have happen in the 2023 NFL draft. I executed a trade with the Indianapolis Colts where we moved from the number 1 overall pick down to number 4. So some details for you so you know what you're getting into here. The Bears traded the number 1 overall pick and the 103rd overall pick, which is their first 4th round pick, to the Colts for this number 4 overall pick in the first round. They grabbed the number 35 overall pick, a second rounder, and they got the 140th pick, the Colts 5th rounder. In addition, the 2024 Magic first round pick. So I think it's a good haul for the Bears. to slide back a few spots. And here we are at number 4. You could see in this column here the players who remain on the board. The mock draft simulator had Bryce Young, as expected, go number 1 overall. Maybe a little disappointment for the Bears here. Will Anderson ends up going number 2 to the Houston Texans, and the Arizona Cardinals, who are kind of a wild card here, a threat to possibly take Jalen Carter. In this simulator, in this simulation, they go with the cornerback from Oregon, Christian Gonzalez, which, listen, he's building a lot of momentum and steam at this point in the draft process. So while this may seem like a little bit of a reach in this simulation, it's not completely out of the realm of possibility. But who cares about the Cardinals? The Bears are on the clock. Luke, you are Ryan Poles. What are you doing here with the 4th overall pick?
Yeah, well, I mean, if I'm Ryan Poles and I see Will Anderson go number 2, I start getting a little nervous, right? Because that's the risk that you take moving down from number 1. Number 1, you get to pick whoever you want. You go to number 4. I know there are 2 guys that everybody in Bears Nation assumes we're going to get one of those 2 guys, right? It's Will Anderson or Jalen Carter. We move down to 4. A couple quarterbacks go. Whoever Arizona takes is probably the other defensive guy, right? But whatever happens in the scenario here, we end up in the same situation. That nobody, there wasn't a second quarterback taken. Whatever the scenario is, if the Bears get to 4 and one of those 2 defenders is on the board, Anderson or Carter, it's an easy call, right? I think the only thing that could be a wild card here is, since there's only one quarterback off the board, do they get more phone calls, and is it worth it to them to listen to who wants to go up and get Stroud or Levis or anything like that? For me, I'm not tempting fate anymore. I moved down. I got my extra picks, my extra haul, and all of that, and I can still get arguably the best player in this draft at a position of need. It's an easy call for me, unless somebody throws the world at me, which I don't see that happening. I don't think I'd get an offer that would allow me to pass up Jalen Carter here after moving down 3 spots, and I still get him. I got to take Carter here.
And look, it's an easy call, like you said, for Ryan Poles. In reality, too, the 3 tech, as Matt Eberflus has said time and time again, is the engine that makes his defense go. The Bears, the only threat, like you said, you drop down to 4. A lot of analysts, experts, fans are assuming that the Houston Texans are going to grab a quarterback at number 2. This is kind of the nightmare scenario, because if this is the real NFL draft weekend, do we really think the Cardinals are going to pass up Jalen Carter at number 3? It's a hard sell for me to believe that. They could be a trade-out candidate for another team coming up for a quarterback. So the odds that Carter falls to 4 are still pretty high. And in this mock draft, the Bears get enriched. You handing in the card, Luke? Is it Jalen Carter?
I'm handing it in, man. You and I have talked about this, though, early on. Even you are the first person to mention it to me. Be like, hey, what if Houston just takes Will Anderson if he's there too? Because he's so good. And that was before DeMeco Ryans was hired as their head coach. So you're telling me you just hired a former Alabama defensive player to be your head coach, and you don't think Will Anderson's going to be on his mind when he's sitting there at number 2? I don't think that's as crazy as it sounded when you first told me that about a month ago. I still think he ends up going with his franchise quarterback because it's something he needs. But man, it just wouldn't shock me at all if DeMeco Ryans is like, no, give me that defensive guy from Alabama, and I'll start my tenure with that guy. I'll worry about the quarterback in a different way. I don't see it happening, but it wouldn't surprise me, man.
So let's hand in the pick. The Bears get Jalen Carter. Now, as the mock draft runs through, the Chicago Bears with the trade will be up at number 35. We'll see how this rolls out. We have a trade offer. Now, we're not going to get this crazy. We're going to reject all these trades. We're not going to entertain anything. We don't want the Bears talkers watching this video bored through multiple trades. But the reality is Chicago is going to get their fair share of trade offers, especially at the top of the first round. So don't be surprised if the Bears aren't picking at 4. If the Bears pick up extra second rounders and keep trading back to accumulate even more picks in future years. But at this point, the Chicago Bears are on the clock at number 35, and we're looking at essentially the best players available. I mean, somehow Bijan Robinson slides to number 35. I mean, look, you're the GM. That's a tough guy to pass up at number 35. I know that don't draft running backs high narrative, but this is not a high pick for a player who many think is a top 5 overall football player in the class. Followed up by Jahmyr Gibbs. I think that would be a little bit of a reach here. And then, we can kind of sift through the positions. You tell me what position you want to look at, Luke, and we'll narrow it down that way.
Well, I think obviously this is all dependent on how they use that $100 million in cap space, right? Because that's what they want to. Any team who has that much cap space, you want to be able to fill your needs so you can go into the draft and be free to take the talent as it falls to you. So, assuming that the Bears have added at least some veterans in those key positions of need, offensive tackle, wide receiver, obviously the first ones that come to mind to me, we have got to help Justin Fields. We've got to give him the supporting cast that will allow him to maximize his ridiculous potential. That means rebuilding the offensive line. That means getting him as many weapons as possible. So this is an interesting scenario for me. I want to see the tackles. I want to see the tackles who are on the board, and I want to see the wide receivers because I think that's where the situation or the conversation has to start. For me here, DeJuan Jones and Darnell Wright are fantastic prospects. I think I like both of them better at right tackle than left because, honestly, if I'm thinking about a left tackle, Jalen Duncan is the guy that jumps out to me as the guy that would make me most comfortable as a day one left tackle starter at the next level. I like those other guys on the right side. Matthew Bergeron, I like him a good bit. Might like him at guard better than I do at tackle. So Duncan is the tackle that makes me most intrigued for what we need as a franchise if I'm the Chicago Bears. So I feel like maybe I'll be able to get him a little bit later, maybe with that extra second round pick. Let's look at those wide receivers before I make the decision that I'm pretty confident I'm going to make here.
So let me just say this, Luke. Bears Nation will tell you that the Bears landed a gem in the 5th round with Braxton Jones last year at left tackle, and it sounds like Ryan Poles is going to be committed to him on the left side unless a free agent absolutely is a must-have guy to plug their right tackle as we go into free agency season and we go into draft season is kind of the more pressing need. So when you talk about a guy like DeJuan Jones or Darnell Wright, I'm a little cooler on Darnell Wright than the masses, but a guy like DeJuan Jones at right tackle, that could be a plug-and-play guy for the Bears. So if you're looking at tackles, the right side is the priority, quote-unquote, right now. But in terms of draft valuation, is a right tackle where you're going to spend the 35th pick? You're the GM. That's why you get paid the big bucks, Luke. So
hey, that's it. That's it. And you know what? Maybe the fact that I found Braxton Jones, again, a gem from Southern Utah, right? One of my favorite sleepers in last year's draft. I thought that was a great pick by them. Didn't they get Robinson in the 5th too? Didn't they get both of those guys in the 5th last year? 2 fantastic picks by Poles, I think. So if they're comfortable with Jones, I kind of like that. The difference for me here is, and as you look at these top wide receivers, I love Josh Downs, but again, is he too similar to Darnell Mooney? Is he too much of the same type of receiver? That's what concerns me there. I like some of these interior guys. I like Cody Mogg, Steve Avila.
So, Luke, the biggest and most glaring need the Chicago Bears have on their offensive line right now is center. Like, absolute must upgrade position. You got arguably the best in class, John Michael Schmitz, staring at you at number 35 overall. I don't know if he'll make it this far when draft day rolls around, but this is a potential plug-and-play starter at the biggest position of weakness for the Bears in the offensive line. What do you think of John Michael Schmitz? Do you think he's a player worthy of this top 35 selection?
One of the biggest reasons I would say that I'm not comfortable with that is if you look at the rest of down that list, Steve Avila can play center. Joe Tippmann can play center. Patterson has played center. Luke Whippler is a center. I like all of those guys enough, and Olu from Michigan as well. A lot of really talented centers, guys that have played a lot of football at a high level at Power 5 programs. I think the depth of this class would shy me away from spending this high of a pick on a center, and I cannot get over the fact that, again, I know the running back position is devalued. You can say all of those things that you want, but look at me. Like, you go into this offseason with that much money. You have got to spend it in a way so that if Bijan Robinson falls to you at 35, it has to be the easiest decision you've ever made in your life. Bijan Robinson, just to give you an idea, is number 3 overall on my board right now.
And yet, listen, this is not crazy.
Not at all.
Like, I personally think he's
go back and look at when Jonathan Taylor came off the board and DeAndre Swift came off the board. They went a little lower than people thought, and they went to teams that nobody thought would take a running back that high, right? Nobody expected the Colts because they had Marlon Mack, and he was coming off a good season. Nobody expected the Lions to take a running back that high. Those guys fell to them outside the first round, and they were like, screw it, give me a running back. You're telling me if Bijan Robinson, we're talking like a Saquon Barkley level prospect, ends up in the second round and they're on the board, that they wouldn't say, hey, let me get that guy and Justin Fields, especially after free agency where we know we've added some pieces along the offensive line. Maybe we've got a receiver. We've already got Mooney coming back healthy, and we've got Chase Claypool, who we invested in. You're telling me they wouldn't be able to make that pick if they fill those other needs? It's easy. It's a no-brainer for me. It's just
and remember something. You look at these mock drafts that are being published right now. Like, there's probably a lot of Bears talkers out there right now that are watching this, being like, Bijan Robinson at 35. That's insane. This is the most unrealistic mock draft I've ever seen. Not really, because most mock drafts don't have Bijan Robinson coming off the board till pick 27, 28, 26. If at all in the first round. So you're only talking about dropping.
And there's a lot. Part of that is because nobody really needs a running back enough to take him earlier than that, right? I mean, you think maybe Philly, if you want to get crazy, Philly at 10 feels like the team that's like, okay, they're really good. They have that luxury top 10 pick from the Saints trade. Maybe they would take him that high. But other than that, he ends up, the last few mocks I've done, he's ended up with Detroit at 18 because Swift has been injured. Jamal Williams is a free agent. They have that extra first-round pick, and I feel like if any team could take a chance on him, they could. But it feels like the same story. Every team he gets to in the first round, you're like, I don't know if they really need him, but can you pass him up at that point? So I feel like you have that conversation with 6 or 7 teams on the back half of the first round. What's the likelihood that all of those teams are like, you know what, we really like the depth of this running back class. We don't feel like we need to spend a first-rounder on that guy. He's special, but does he make enough of a difference to warrant taking him with our first round pick? And again, all these other teams don't have $100 million cap space to spend in free agency. They're not going to be able to address the needs to the level the Bears will be able to do with their money and their veterans. So I'm telling you, man, if I'm Ryan Poles, and again, last offseason proved that he's not going to go just blow money all over the place. He's going to be smart. He's going to be economical. He's going to try to get the most bang for his buck. He's going to try to fill those needs as best as possible. So if the number 3 player in the entire draft falls out of the first round and into his lap, he's like, you know what? Give me the playmaker. Give me you telling me this wouldn't get jerseys flying off the shelves and wouldn't get that offense energized to have those 2 guys in the backfield? Are you kidding me?
I'm just telling. Listen, you don't have to sell me hard on this. All I'm telling you is you better be ready on Twitter to get a lot of upset Bears fans who want John Michael Schmitz or DeJuan Jones or one of these offensive linemen to be the pick here at number 35 to protect Justin Fields rather than a running back to make plays alongside Justin Fields.
I want to take a look at one more. Let's see what the edge.
Hey, listen, I don't want to push you off your perch here.
No. I'm taking Bijan Robinson, but I want to know what edge guys I'm passing up here. I'm not taking anybody else. I want to see the edge group, so I have a full awareness of what I'm missing out. See, I like Keon White, I like Derek Hall, but again, I like a lot of these guys enough to where if there's 5 of them there, and I feel like I can get one in the second or the top of the third later on. I feel like I can get a tackle.
And remember, you're coming back around 18 picks from now with another pick.
That's what I mean. There's no way. I'm not doing it. I'm not passing this guy up. He's the 3rd best player in the draft. I'm sitting at 35. Justin Fields and Bijan Robinson in that backfield. God help us all. Give it to me. Give it to me.
Bijan, there it is. Okay, so Bears fans,
you just got 2 of the top 3 players in the draft. I just want to say that.
Jalen Carter getting the first round, 4th overall. Bijan Robinson, this is probably the first and maybe only mock draft, Bears talkers, that you're going to find a Bijan Robinson becoming a Chicago Bear, because he's not going to be the pick at the top of the first round. I don't think the Bears will trade back in the first round.
Available, maybe. Best player available.
Hey, listen, that's the best way to draft, right? Talent over need. But Bijan could be there at the top of the second round. Here's the other thing. Bijan sitting there possibly at 35 overall. The phone will ring again for Ryan Poles, for teams looking to move up to get him, because he will probably be, if he falls out of the first round, he's going to be the guy everybody's trying to trade up for.
Everybody's going to call at 33 and be like, give me that pick.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so here we are at 53 overall. Bears back on the clock. This is the 2nd round pick they got from the trade with the Baltimore Ravens for Roquan Smith. Some tight ends at the top of the board here. Darnell Washington, Luke Musgrave. You have some defensive linemen, edge rusher, Derek Hall, another position of need. That's a good consolation prize for the Bears, missing out on Will Anderson. Interior offensive lineman from North Dakota State, Cody Mauch. Where are we going? What are we looking at here? Positions you want to target? You want to look some edge rushers, maybe some interior offensive linemen?
I do like the edge. I like the interior guys. A couple of centers that I would like in that range. I really like Derek Hall from Auburn. I like to see him at the top of that list. What do my wide receivers look like in my tackles? That's see Jalen Duncan still there, man. That's my guy.
He's a good player, man. He's an athlete. He's a player.
I like that a lot. What do my receivers look like? I like Rice. I like Tillman. Dell's fun, but again, I might have to wait on the tiny guy. I need somebody with some size. That's why Rice and Tillman in particular. Tillman's a big physical guy. I like him a lot.
Yeah, Bears have a hard time fielding Darnell Mooney and Nate Dell on the same wide receiver.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough. And again, so part of me is obviously
combined they might weigh the same amount as DK Metcalf.
And what's interesting here is obviously we've got these numbers on the left, right? These are the overall rankings based on what they're thinking here. I feel like in an exercise like this, those numbers represent the intel that I've done and my team has done to gather information throughout the league and have an idea of where these guys might go. So it's not necessarily cheating to look and say, oh, he's got an 84 next to his name. Maybe I can wait till the third, because that's how that information is used, right? You use that to be like, maybe I can wait a minute. And sometimes you're wrong. Sometimes guys feed you bad info. They try to set you up, but you have to be wise in how you use that. But I'm going to use that to my advantage here and think maybe I can get Cedric Tillman a little later. For me here, I've got to protect my investment in Justin Fields. Bijan Robinson is not going to do much if I can't block for him. I like some of the centers on the board, but I feel like tackle is the way I got to go. I love Jalen Duncan way too much to pass him up here. I feel like he's a very polished player, plug-and-play starter, great athlete. I'd love to see him on the board still here. If I take the risk and I go with the luxury pick and Bijan Robinson and Duncan falls to me here, I got to take him.
Listen, I love this decision by Luke, a.k.a. Ryan Poles Easterling. Jalen Duncan, if for those of you who are college and draft fans, last summer he was considered possibly offensive tackle 1 in the class. Yep. He was a first-round guy in every preseason mock. For one reason or another, maybe his tape wasn't the best, wasn't up to what people expected in 2022, and he's fallen into this second, late first, mid-second range of prospects. And to have him here on the board at 53, and just to give you a little background here, these rankings on the left, what NFL Mock Draft Database does so well is these are aggregate rankings from like a bunch of
That's what I was hoping.
Websites.
That's what I was hoping.
Yeah, these are really good. This gives you essentially a general feel for what the average ranking is for all the websites that you guys are going to, including Luke's work at DraftWire, the Draft Network, a whole bunch of different websites. He aggregates all the rankings, and Jalen Duncan is essentially a top 65 prospect at this point on all the rankings that you'll find. At this point at 53, Jalen Duncan, I love it. Book it. Jalen Duncan in the second round. So now the Bears are looking at pick number 64 with already having Jalen Carter, Bijan Robinson. Wow, that would be sweet, Bears fans. And Jalen Duncan already in the fold. Now, at number 64 overall, the Chicago Bears. Let me see here. What are we looking at, Luke?
I mean, let's go again. Wide receiver, edge, and interior offensive line is really where I'm looking here, trying to find the best value at whatever of those positions. This is also a spot where without a third-round pick, I'd like to move back again. This is where I might think about doing that to try to gather some more picks here. But I'm sticking and picking at 64. I got to see what's there at wide receiver. Got to see what's there in terms of the edge guys, and then the interior offensive line as well.
So wide receivers looks like Cedric Tillman from Tennessee. Nate Dell still hanging around. Xavier Hutchinson, a pretty good-looking prospect, but again, a little early maybe for them. Let's see the edge rushers. All right. The Bears need a 3-tech. Keanu Benton, that's a little bit of a value player who's sliding a little bit here.
I like that pick. We got our 3-tech in Carter, though, so.
Oh, well, yeah. Hello. Overlooking that there at the number 4 pick, the premium blue chipper at the top of the draft.
What do the centers look like? Let's see the interior. See, we got all those guys still there, which again, that kind of tempts me. But look at where we're picking next. We don't pick again for another 70 picks. So all of these guys, Steve, Avila, Tippmann, Patterson, look at those rankings. All of those guys are going to come off the board by the time we pick again. I feel like that's what makes me nervous about waiting for a center when I feel like there's 3 or 4 guys that could be starters right away. The only thing that might keep me from doing that is Cedric Tillman, who I really, really like. But I feel like with Mooney, with Claypool, and again, the fact that we've had a bunch of money to spend, we probably have been able to spend it on a wide receiver. Might have to go interior offensive line. Again, it's so much about helping Justin Fields and building things. And I feel like you have to build inside out there. If you fortify the offensive line the way you shouldn't have to worry as much about the weapons, and the weapons will be better and more effective once you do that, especially if we've invested number 35 overall in a running back. You better get the trenches figured out. It's a tough call. I really like, a lot of these guys can play multiple positions too. Patterson has played guard before. Avila's played guard before. Tippmann is really tall and typically don't like tall centers. It's a lot tougher for them to get leverage because of that pad level, but I feel like he's pretty good. 64 overall. I don't know, man. I need a tone setter. I need a nasty physical guy. I'm going to take Steve Avila from TCU here. I like him a lot. Again, just a nasty, big, physical, tone-setting guy in the trenches. Chicago fans got to love that. You got to establish the run. You got to have that type of physical mentality. Back-to-back offensive line picks. That's how you do this. When you get a running back, if you're going to take a risk on a running back early, you better get those big uglies in front of them, and that's what we're going to do with back-to-back picks here.
Bears fans are not going to complain about that. Avila was one of the really impressive players at the Senior Bowl. He's a big, strong dude, like you said, but he moves a lot better than I expected. He's more going to get rid of these trade offers. He's got lighter feet than I thought for a guy as big and strong as he is, and I think he's going to have some positional versatility in the league, which is extremely valuable, especially when you're talking about a guy, top 70 pick offensive lineman. Those players, you'd like to project them as plug and play year one starters, but it doesn't always work out that way. And sometimes players like Avila, who can play guard, can play center, they'll work their way into the starting lineup, if not day one, soon after day one, because there's going to be a guy at guard or at center who either gets hurt or plays below standards, and Avila will be the next man up. So that positional versatility is huge. Now we're kind of getting to the thick of things, but just kind of recap here. Jalen Carter, Bijan Robinson, Jalen Duncan, Steve Avila. I mean, we're looking at back-to-back picks around Justin Fields. 35, 53, and 64 were Justin Fields picks. Bijan, the running back, sure, is he going to block and keep Justin Fields upright? Some reps he will, but he is just as effective as a receiver out of the backfield as a guy like Saquon Barkley. So you basically got 2 for 1 in that pick, an elite running back and a top-tier pass catcher.
And not to mention, Brian, what does he do for the running game and what Justin Fields can bring to the running game when you've got all those read options and things where the linebackers are having to read and who's keeping the ball? You've got to pick and choose. Justin Fields or Bijan Robinson, who's going to have the ball?
Yeah,
that's not going to be a fun decision for opposing defenses to make.
Yeah, I'd hate to be the defensive coordinator the Saturday night before Bears game. That's literally nightmare fuel. And Jalen Duncan, I believe, can play right tackle. He's going to be a guy, Braxton Jones and Jalen Duncan, 2 athletic bookend offensive tackles. And then Steve Avila, we just talked about. So now we're kind of getting into the thick of things here with the 133rd pick. If we take a look at all the players who are still on the board, now we're kind of, let's take a look up here. Chicago's team needs, according to NFL Mock Draft Database. You've addressed the interior offensive line, defensive line, obviously offensive tackle. 2 of the bigger needs, edge and wide receiver, still have not been addressed. This is usually a good range for a wide receivers or anybody who kind of looks like good value to you here. Also, Luke, I want to maybe call your attention. Tight end could be a sneaky position the Bears target. Cole Kmet is a player that many people think will get a contract extension. I think he will too. But Cole Kmet's ability as a pass catcher, his upside as a playmaker seems a little bit limited. I'm not sure if any of the guys still on the board profile as a better pass catcher than him. And then if you look at the edge players, some interesting guys. KJ Henry had a nice Senior Bowl, but is this a little early for him? Yeah. This is why they pay you the big bucks, Luke. This is why you're the USA Today draft guru. You're going to bring the Bears some spectacular selections over the next handful of picks. What are we working with?
Well, I like the fact that I have 2 picks in the next 4, right? The next 5 picks, are 2 of them are mine. So I am looking at edge. I am looking at wide receiver. I like a few of those guys. I really like Maldonado out of Pitt. I feel like he's been a little underrated. I love Tyjae Spears. We don't need a running back anymore, obviously. The problem is the wide receiver, I feel like, is a great value here is Tyler Scott. But again, he's another undersized, speed, explosive guy. Not that that's a problem, but I really, really would like somebody with some size, which is why it draws my attention to A.T. Perry here from Wake Forest, because that's the guy with big, massive frame, long arms, leaping ability, the contested catch type of guy that I feel like would be a great pairing with Claypool and with Darnell Mooney. So that's kind of where my eyes are going. That the problem is I love Tyler Scott. I feel like he's going to be a name that when we look back at this, when we get to April and we see where he actually gets drafted and we think about the fact that he was on the board in the 4th round, we're going to laugh really, really hard. And so that's just, do I just go with the better player, or do I take a player that I don't think is quite as good just because I think he fits the body type and the skill set? You're the assistant GM. What would you prefer here? I'm still going to make the call here, but what are your thoughts here on the receiver? Do you feel like an explosive guy, even though he's smaller, is that too much?
Well, here's the thing, right? First, before we get into that, for all the don't draft running back early advocates, you kind of have some fuel here, right?
Yes, you do.
Because if you
Absolutely.
look at what we're staring at here with the 133rd pick, players like Tyjae Spears, Eric Gray, Roshan Johnson, all falling to this pick. And now you have to ask yourself, Bijan, for as special as he is at the 35th pick, would that pick have been better used on a bigger position of need? And you come back around here at 133 and grab a kid like Spears, who he's got some legitimate upside. Bijan is in a category all of his own. Right. But the question becomes, is the fall off from the wide receiver that could have been had there, the edge rusher that could have been had there, steeper than the fall off between the effectiveness of running backs? Bijan's the more spectacular prospect, but if a running back gets you 80 rushing yards and 50 receiving yards in a game like Tyjae Spears profiles as a guy capable of doing that on any given week, the effectiveness, even if it's not as spectacular, it's still production from the running back position. But going back to wide receiver, a guy I like is Jaden Reed. A guy I like is Trey Palmer. Speed, and more speed. Michael Wilson looked like an all-around playmaker down at the Senior Bowl. Puka Nacua, I'm not as high on as some of our draft colleagues. You want a big-body dude who can make plays over the middle of the field? Jonathan Mingo is right there. So it really comes down to trusting your scouting report, trusting what you think is the most pressing skill set that the Bears need. Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks have always preached the basketball team philosophy when it comes to building a wide receiver core. Like when you're building a basketball team, you have 5 guys who all play specific roles: the point guard, the shooting guard, the power forward, the center, different body types, different skill sets. And when you're building out a wide receiver room, you want to kind of do the same thing. So what do the Bears have right now? They have the big body downfield playmaker in Chase Claypool. They have the electric route running, undersized, silky smooth player in Darnell Mooney. They kind of don't have the player who molds both of those together. Is that A.T. Perry? Is that Jaden Reed? I mean, neither one of those guys. Jaden Reed isn't a big dude, but he's bigger than Mooney. Probably a better route runner than Claypool. I don't know. I don't think you can really go wrong here, Luke, with any of these wideouts. So it's really going to be
I tell you
your scouting assessment.
Yeah, what this is pushing me towards is to go back to the edge guys and look, because I like the depth here so much that we're picking again at 137. We're picking again at 140, 150. I really like the depth of those guys available. So if we can see what else is there and maybe wait a little bit, but I really like Baldonado. I like Henry a good bit. Scroll down a little bit, make sure there's nobody I'm missing here that they may just be a little lower on. Don't think so. Do we have any other needs that are just kind of lurking?
I mean, listen, you can't go wrong with offensive tackle. I know it's crazy, or interior offensive line. This is what the Bears need more than anything else. They got to build from the inside out to protect Justin Fields. We can also look at some positions we haven't checked out yet. You got cornerback, linebacker. I mean, there's probably some good value there. But if we just go look at the board all around, Michigan's interior offensive lineman.
That's the guy that's speaking out of me. Outland Trophy winner, can play center, can play guard, can play tackle. I mean, he can play across basically all 5 positions. We go 3 in a row. We're going to go 3 in a row and completely rebuild this entire offensive line.
For the Chicago Bears, that's what they need. And if you make this pick at 103, If you take Olu at 103, you're basically saying, all right, Steve Avila, Olu, guys, battle it out. Battle it out for the guy that's going to get the starting job in the interior, whether you're a center, if they move on from Cody Whitehair, left guard, if Tevin Jenkins has been very, very concerning with his injuries. The best ability
case
is
scenario,
availability.
They both win starting jobs, right?
There's a chance.
Play guard, one can play center. Take him. Give me Olu. I'm going to go value. I'm going to go offensive line.
A lot of trades coming through. All right, so we have now gone back-to-back picks on the O-line. We're back on the clock at 137. And are we going to go right? Look, all the wide receivers still on the board. I think that's a great strategy. I don't think Olu would still be there. I think he'd go off at the value of offensive line. This is a great exercise to establish what the value is in football. You cannot find. It's much more difficult to find the big-bodied starting quality offensive linemen than it is to find guys who can make plays on the outside. The elite wide receivers get paid the big money because they're special, but it's a high-volume position. You could find wide receivers this range in the draft, and this is a perfect example. We're picking at 137, and according to the aggregate rankings, you have the 118, 124, 133, 137, 139 rated wide receivers still on the board.
You're gonna love this. I'm gonna double dip. I'm gonna take wide receivers with both of these next two picks because I
love it.
Then I don't have to care what role, whatever. I'm gonna do both because I love Tyler Scott, and again, I think he's gonna go way earlier than this. Once the combine happens, he could easily run in the 4.2s, and it's gonna be ridiculous. You add him to the mix here, and then I'll take him, and I want to see which one of those bigger guys is still on the board here in a few picks when we come up again at 140.
Tyler Scott, you're a bear. Get rid of these trade offers. Look at that. None of them else. If we look back at who just went off the board. So we took Tyler Scott, and it was a tight end and linebacker.
So what we can do here is because of the way that's stacked, let's go to the edge position. Let's see what's there at edge and see how comfortable we feel with what could be there in a little bit. See, I like Allegheny. I like Dylan Horton a good bit. Baldonado's talented. Let's go to the overall board. Let's see if we're missing anything just sticking out. I can't take a second running back. They'll murder me.
Yeah. I think your Twitter account would literally burn in flames.
But to give you an idea, this is why Bijan Robinson could slide to 35 because every other team will say Tajay Spears is the fourth best running back in this draft, and he's going to be there in halfway through the fourth round. We can wait for that.
Bijan, I think it's one of two realities for Bijan. And by no means did we intend this to be a Bijan Robinson podcast, but he's either going to be.
We did not expect this. We did not.
No, he's either going to be a top 10 pick. Eagles are going to make waves and take him at number 10.
Yep.
Or he's going to be the guy who's still waiting in the green room on day 2. Those guys are always the unexpected guys. You don't expect the elite college football player to still be sitting there on day 2. And Bijan could be that guy specifically because of the position he plays. So at pick 140, edge remains the
really
biggest need.
Oh my God, he's still there. Like there's nobody like that. I like Wanya Morris a good bit.
D-line, it looks like a big run on D-line happened early.
Snacks Coburn is good. I like Snacks Coburn a good bit. Anybody who's 340 pounds and calls himself Snacks, I'm a big fan of.
Elite.
Listen, I'm not gonna lie. I just spent about 20 minutes with Snacks Coburn this past week. He's down at Exos out in Arizona training out there, and I had some time to chat with him. And that's a football player, man. That's a dude who loves to play the game of football, and I think he's going to be a fun interview for a lot of teams that are looking for a guy who's going to play very competitive football. I really like him a lot. Oh man. Wide receiver.
So if we look at the Bears team needs, according to NFL Mock Draft Database, the biggest position remains edge. And this will be somewhat of I don't want to say a disappointment for Bears fans, because I think if Will Anderson goes number 2 and Jalen Carter is the pick at 4, Bears fans will probably say, hey, we got the 3 tech and it's fine. We'll get that edge rusher at 35. Now, Bijan slides, value you can't pass up, fine. We'll get that edge rusher with
Now,
one of our
now
next
in
two
hindsight,
picks.
if you could tell me, go back and tell me what edge guys were there at 35, and if I could
Exactly.
have that guy and Tyjae Spears instead, now I'd be kicking myself, right?
So right, this is how, and this is what happens in the war rooms, right?
Yep, this is how
Sometimes
it
your
works.
eyes are bigger than your stomach, and the Bijan appeal. Now we see here. Oh wait, we might leave the 2023 NFL Draft without the Will Anderson consolation prize. Sure, we got Jalen
True.
Carter, we got the sports car and Bijan, but did we
Yep.
address a critical need? The Bears were last in the NFL in sacks in 2022. They had 18 sacks. Well, was it 18 sacks on the season? They were last in the league in 2022. So we're here at 140 overall. Look, I think Chicago is going to sign an edge rusher in free agency.
Right. That's what I was going to say, man. There's so much money to be spent there. There's no way they go into this draft with the same edge group that they have on the roster right now. There's no way.
So what are we looking at here, Luke? Are you double dipping at wide receiver?
I'm double dipping at wide receiver, man. I love A.T. Perry. I think he's the perfect, he's the stretch four, right? You talk about basketball, he's the power forward. He's the guy that brings the red zone, the contested catch ability. I think he's the rim grazer. He's the rebounder, the box out guy in the red zone. Love the size. I like the value here. Again, if you look at the ranking as well, you're getting a guy at 124 that's here at 140. I'll take A.T. Perry here and be fine with that offense.
A.T. Perry.
Is Justin Fields having just like a great day right now looking at this draft?
Listen, he's got 3 new offensive linemen, 2 new pass catchers, and a running back who's probably the only guy in the team who's a better athlete than he is. So that's a dream come true. But Luke, you got to get an edge rusher here for Bears fans.
Let's go get a pass rusher. Let's go get one.
He's got some value here. I don't know what you think of Ali Gay, but I'm a KJ Henry guy. He was down in Mobile. I'm like, dude, this guy with the Clemson helmet, he's flashing some legitimate upside. I think he's getting overlooked. I'm surprised he's got this low of an aggregate ranking.
I agree. I like Henry a lot. Again, him and Baldonado are close for me. But I think Henry's got a little more upside. I'll take KJ Henry here.
Easy enough. The edge rusher has been addressed by Luke. Don't call me Ryan Poles Easterling, who's I think hitting a solid triple, if not a home run, with this draft. And we're back now with the 220th pick, the last pick for the Bears.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm keeping track of these grades here on the right, and I'm pretty happy with it.
Hey, listen, man, if this is the real life outcome for the Bears draft, A+, A, B+, A, B+, A+, B+, B+. And what I want to know is what Bears talkers think. So comment in the comments below. Give me your grade for each pick. Luke will read this. Luke will get absolutely notified of what you think of his performance.
Trust me, he won't let me get away. He won't let me get away.
At Luke Easterling on Twitter. Make sure you hit him up, you hit his mentions, and you let him know what you think. Roast him or toast him, either one. So now we got the last pick here, Luke. Let's look at the big board.
Value, baby, value. Oh yes.
I'm going to tell you where I'm going. If I was a general manager of an NFL team, I will never leave a draft without a quarterback.
A quarterback. Now, ooh.
I don't. This is a bad year for that strategy. This is not a great year to have that philosophy. But there is one guy right here.
Yeah.
Who I might think about this late in the draft. Just a wild card. The kid was down at the Senior Bowl. He's got a live arm, NFL arm. He's going to need some time to develop. But with the 220th pick, the odds of you landing a player who's going to make anything more than a special teams impact in the league are very low odds. Could you find a backup quarterback behind Justin Fields for the next couple of years? It's possible. The odds are probably around the same to find a practice squad arm, maybe a backup quarterback. This might be a bad year for it because look, I mean, if you look at the aggregate rankings, I mean, we're dropping into the mid to low 300s, just a couple quarterbacks deep. I'm staying away from Stetson Bennett, not a guy I'd be interested in. Malik Cunningham is intriguing. A nice blend of arm talent and athleticism. But if we go back to the big board here, you're the GM, man.
See, this is where I talk about when you get to the 7th round, especially, you're talking about special teams, you're talking about overall value, who slipped through the cracks, who has some upside. And obviously you get to the 7th round and obviously you're dealing with maybe some guys who have been injured, maybe some guys that have some off-field stuff and could have gone higher if it was just in terms of their talent. But you mentioned tight end earlier and linebacker, some of these other positions. Where are your special teamers coming from, by the way? They're tight ends, they're DBs, they're linebackers, they're wide receivers. So those positions where guys could come in and make an immediate impact on special teams. Davis Allen's an intriguing one for me because you mentioned earlier the upside as a pass catcher. Do you have a guy at tight end who can catch passes? He's very intriguing to me. I love D. Winters, very athletic linebacker. You saw him with the pick six in the college football playoff. Great athlete. I'm really shocked to see Carter Warren there as an offensive tackle. We've loaded up on offensive line here, so I feel like that would be a little bit of overkill, but I feel like there's some great value there. I don't know, man. That's tough. I feel like special teams value, athleticism and range. I really like D. Winters there. Again, Keandre Coburn's still there if we wanted a nose tackle. Although I talked to him. He's played everything. Keandre Coburn's going through so many different coordinator changes. He's literally played everywhere on the defensive line. So I don't know, man. This is probably as tough as it gets because you want to, this is where you'd like to have all those trades where you load it up on 7th round picks and you can just.
What's funny? But fans watching this, the Bears talker universe out there, it's like this is the 220th pick. Like what's the big deal? But the reality is, day 3 picks are the foundation of playoff rosters. The first couple of picks you make, chances are 1 or 2 of them are going to hit. But you usually, if you look at NFL rosters across the league, they're comprised of guys that were drafted between the 4th round and undrafted free agents who end up sticking around as the core backups, core special teamers, and rotational starters at some point in their career. So the 220th pick, yeah, it might not seem like it's all that important. Khalil Herbert was a 6th rounder a couple of years ago, and now he's going to be a guy who's going to be the primary running back in Chicago next year. And that he's just one of many
Unless
examples.
They take Bijan Robinson.
He's one of many examples of players who have come out of the late day 3 portion of the draft. Listen, for all the things Ryan Pace did poorly, he was a pretty good drafter on day 3. Ryan Poles is proving to have a pretty good eye as well. So we don't want to do overkill here with this pick, right, Luke? So who's your dart?
I'm gonna go with D. Winters here. I like the upside as a potential, starter down the road, but the great athleticism. I think he's an immediate special teamer, and I like his value there. Again, you can't really go wrong with any of those 3 or 4 top guys. But we went so heavy on offense that getting another defender here feels good as well.
And listen, the Bears do have a need a linebacker, so I think it's a good use of the last pick of the Bears 2023 mock draft with Luke Easterling as GM. Let's review it, Bears fans. Number 4 overall pick after a trade with the Colts is Jalen Carter, defensive lineman from Georgia. At number 35, let them know how you feel, Bears fans. Bijan Robinson goes to the Bears, slides out of round 1, becomes a Chicago Bear with the pick they grabbed from the Indianapolis Colts. The 53rd overall pick, offensive tackle from Maryland, Jalen Duncan, plug-and-play right tackle starter for the Bears out of the 2nd round, home run, great value. At 64 overall, the interior offensive lineman from TCU, Steve Avila. He's capable to play at guard, at center. Both positions could be needs for the Bears as we enter the 2023 season. Can't go wrong there. And if he's a failure, if he's a flop, I'm not even going to attempt to butcher his first and last name. We'll just call him Olu from Michigan. He's a good security blanket, good insurance policy. One of those guys has to pan out, if not both. Luke backs it up, goes back to back at wide receiver with Tyler Scott from Cincinnati and A.T. Perry at picks 137 and 140, giving Justin Fields a nice range of pass catchers. And the edge rusher finally comes to the Bears at pick 150 with KJ Henry from Clemson and linebacker special teamer D. Winters from TCU.
Look at that A+. Look at that A+ on a 7th round pick.
They got a lot of good grades there. And let me get over here now. Luke, I want to thank you for your commitment to the Bears Talk universe, for doing this mock draft, for all the Chicago Bears fans out there. And regardless of what the comments say, you did a wonderful job as Ryan Poles for a day. Follow Luke on Twitter at Luke Easterling. You could follow me on Twitter at Bryan Perez NFL. Head over to bearstalk.com for all of your daily Chicago Bears news and notes. And most importantly, for what we're doing here on this channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification reminder so you get the latest videos emailed, texted to you, however you get notified. Remember, fans, let's just keep coming back bearing down, and talk some Bears.